Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico Easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
You may be wondering why you keep doing that, considering all of the issues people have had with the government-run schools. Corey DeAngelis joins us now. He's the National Director of Research at the American Federation for Children and also Executive Director of Educational Freedom Institute, which is an adjunct of Cato. Corey, thank you for joining us today. Always good to talk with you.
Yeah, it's good to be on. Thank you so much.
Well, there really is a growing movement here with regard to school choice. And let's be clear, when we say school choice, this has to do with, in a very succinct way, and you're so good at phrasing it, Corey, this is about Americans, the education dollars for each kid to follow the child, follow the student where they choose to go versus funding the institution that the government chooses. It's really that simple.
Yeah, the basic idea is allowing the education funding to follow the child to wherever they're getting an education. It's the idea of funding students, not systems. And just yesterday, a new Braun research poll came out finding nationwide support at about 78% of Americans supporting the concept of education savings accounts, which is the purest form of funding students directly.
That is so phenomenal, 78%. And I know, according to this Wall Street Journal article, Democrats are jumping on board with this. And listen, we all have our various reasons for supporting school choice. But Democrats, by and large, they point to mask policy, you tell us here, with regard to what's motivating them. Is that right?
Yeah, and there's two interesting polls recently finding this trend. One from Real Clear Opinion Research polling nationwide, finding that Democratic support for funding students directly has jumped 11 percentage points. All the way up to 70% support in June of 2021, a huge jump since over the past year. And then this latest one from Echelon Insights actually finds that Democrats, the masking debate might turn Democrats into school choice supporters as well. And the question was phrased in a way saying that if you're unsafe with your school's masking policy, if, for example, your school doesn't mandate masks, Democrats are actually supportive of a voucher to take your children's education dollars to pay for private school or homeschool costs. And so I think, Republicans for a long time have already understood the benefits of choice and allowing families to take their children's education dollars to a private provider. But this year in particular, I think Democrats are waking up as well. They're starting to figure out that these one-size-fits-all systems might not always work in their favor, particularly when it comes to these one-size-fits-all mask debates. I think this is the only way forward out of this, to where we're not forcing other people's kids into a policy that we wish to have is to allow people to choose the school that aligns with their values best.
Corey, that may be one of the most, the best silver linings of COVID I've heard. If you really are, if Democrats are starting to see the power and the potential for school choice with, them wanting to exercise their choice when it comes to COVID policies. But, one thing I feel like when I hear talk about school choice, or a pushback I often hear, is what's this going to do to the public schools? And I think one of the things that's important is that public school parents should recognize that even if they don't want to exercise school choice, it means you'll have leverage. Because I know as a public school parent, one of the most frustrating things is I feel like they don't really care. They take me for granted, but this would empower everybody, even those who want to remain at public schools. Is that what you've seen around states that have exercised or allowed more choice for parents?
Yeah, totally. And look, no one's telling anybody that the public school option should be off the table. That's always included in any of these policies that allow the funding to follow the child. You can still choose the public school, and in fact, the public schools actually up their game in response to competition. There's about 28 studies on the topic. 26 of those 28 studies find statistically significant positive effects of that private school choice competition on the results in the public schools too. So school choice is a rising tide that lifts all boats, and this isn't an us versus them conversation. I mean, allowing people to choose their grocery store, for example, isn't anti-Safeway. Allowing people to choose their school isn't anti-public school. It's just pro-choice, and everybody turns out to be in a better position as a result. And also in that Real Clear Opinion Research polling nationwide, some of the biggest jumps in support were among parents who had their kids in the public school system. So to your point, I think families just want that leverage going forward. They don't want to feel powerless ever again like they have over the past 18 months. And they may want to keep their public school going forward. This just gives them the option just in case something doesn't align with their values, or something, perhaps the form of instruction going forward doesn't align with what works best for their kid for whatever reason.
Well, Corey DeAngelo, as you say, it's not an us versus them issue, and certainly with the 78% poll now supporting school choice, that clearly is the case. However, if them is the teachers union, then it still is an us versus them issue because they are still entrenched on this idea. Let's talk about the Virginia governor's race. We just had Glenn Youngkin on the program last hour. He full-throatedly endorsed school choice. Terry McAuliffe, quite the opposite. He's definitely with them if them is the teachers union.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a problem here, that politicians will respond not to logic and morality at sometimes. They'll respond to power dynamics. And what's interesting to me is a lot of the same politicians that support funding students directly when it comes to higher education with Pell Grants and for pre-K programs like the Federal Head Start program, for example, or funding people directly when it comes to food stamps, they get all up in arms only when it comes to these in-between years of K through 12 education. And again, the only difference there is one of power dynamics, that choice is the norm with higher education, pre-K, and just about any other industry in the United States. But choice threatens that entrenched special interest that would otherwise profit from getting your children's education dollars, regardless of how well the school performs and regardless of how well and how satisfied the families are. So I think the unions have a lot of sway, and they overwhelmingly donate to one political party over the other. But I think it's going to become less and less politically profitable to come out against school choice when we have such huge swells of support, especially over the past 18 months, for this concept of funding the student directly from both parties. I mean, there's going to become a time that Democratic politicians and Republican politicians alike are going to have to listen to the needs of their constituents and families as opposed to the desires of the system and the teachers unions.
And we're a little behind in Virginia, right? Because I feel like when you look at what's happening in other states, a lot of states have overcome kind of the pushback from the teachers unions and have managed to get a lot of school choice or parent empowering legislation across the finish line, right?
Yeah, I mean, this past year in particular, we're calling it the year of school choice, or the year of funding students, not systems. 18 states in this year alone have enacted or expanded programs to fund students directly. It's a huge victory, and it's partially the teachers union's own fault for overplaying their hand and showing their true colors.
Yeah.
But it's true, in West Virginia, there wasn't such a victory this past year. It's been more of the red states, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are some states that have forms of school choice. For example, Maryland has something called the Boost Scholarship Program that actually did get an increase of funding this year for low-income students. So it can be done. It shouldn't be a partisan issue.
It shouldn't. No.
Politicians just need to listen to parents, not power.
Well, and Corey, part of the reason that this is growing is because you've been such a great articulate voice with regard to this. And I just want to hone in on one thing you just said. If you support food stamps, or if you think food stamps works, think about it. Imagine if food stamps, if all that money just went to the supermarkets instead of to the individuals, and every individual had to go to the supermarket that was closest to them in their neighborhood, and they had no choice, and they could only get the food that supermarket decided they could have. That's exactly what we're doing with our education dollars, and it's such a great analogy, Corey, on how it's upside down. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much.